Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. It's Monday, May 19th, 8:30 at night. Just getting home from soccer practice. Hopefully I'll be able to keep my voice throughout this whole thing. And this will be the video where we go over the trades and holdings for ULTY, YieldMax's Ultra Option Income Strategy ETF. All right, big picture, we'll just look at how things did. We got a good mixture of red and green. If you saw the thumbnail, there was I think a little more than half of the stocks within the fund went down today. And of course, big movers. That's why they trade them, because they have lots of volatility. So 4%, almost 8%, almost 8%, almost 8%. So it looks like a little over 7%, nearly 8% is the biggest mover today. So no double digits, but still pretty big moves when we're talking about options. So, all right, we'll get a little more in depth and take a look at how things did. Before I get started going over our changes in market values based on our prices, I just want to point out I added a couple columns. Some people were asking for the 30-day IV on the individual stocks. So I will not continue to update them throughout the week, but I will after Friday's close, because that's when they're going to matter. They'll play into the IV portion of the estimate. All right, so I also put a weighting next to each one. So I took each stock, how much money is in that stock, divided by how much money is in all of the stocks. We left the options out. And so just out of all the stocks, that's what the weighting will be, the percentage. And then I applied that weighting to the 30-day IV for each individual stock. And that's how I came up with the average IV. So the overall is 74.64. I had mistakenly just taken the 30-day IV of ULTY, and as we know, ULTY doesn't actually move that much. You know, it runs in the $6 to $6.20, $6.30. That's not big, huge swings. So that's not what, when they apply the IV to figure out their distribution, that's not the number we're talking about. It's on the underlyings. So I've got a weighted average, and so with that being said, I'm going to make an update to what I told you in my estimate video, although it's not going to change anything. So I had originally applied ULTY's IV to come up with this number, and it came out to like 3.3 cents. But when I take a look at the underlyings, it comes up with more like 9.03 cents, which is more realistic. I'm still keeping my guess at 10 cents, but based on the IV, I would say 0903. All right. All right, so we'll go through. If you haven't seen it before, I don't update any of the information on this side until after the video is over. That way we've got the previous close, or what will be the open, compared to the close. That way you can see the percentage change for the day and the change in market value. These are all run off of formulas off of each other. So if I were to bring it over here and update everything, then everything would be zeroed out. And then not to mention there is no available information for all these different option prices and values until the holdings come out tomorrow. So that's when these all get updated. So this is how everything started today. All right, C3.ai went down 4.06% today, closing at 23.18, a loss of $333,000 in market value, and taking their calls that are sold to 10% out of the money. ASTS down 7.69% to 24.61, a loss of $670,000-ish. Again, taking both of their call strike prices that are sold well out of the money. And you're going to see when we switch pages, a lot of trades got made where generally Monday's not so much of a trading day. Webull ticker BULL, went down 4.03%, a loss of an even $200,000 in value. Again, none of these are actual losses because they didn't sell the stock, so this is just change in market value. They're at 1191, and their calls are now 21+% out of the money. Kava Group down 6.97% to $90.06, a loss of $600,000 in value, 11% out of the money for the calls. Coinbase lost just under 1% to $263.99, bringing their calls to 6% out of the money and a loss of $113,000 in value. CoreWeave went up nearly 8% to $86.59, a gain of over $1 million in value, and their calls are still out of the money. That's nice, but they're getting close, 1.6 and 3.94%. Carvana was one that switched up their way they were playing things and don't have any calls sold. They have a put spread sold, and it worked out for them because the stock went up. So these, if you remember from the week look ahead, were starting the week in the money, so they've now moved out of the money, so that benefited us. 305.21 is where it ended, $133,000 in value added. We don't talk about the treasuries because they don't really change too much. First, other than when they take money in and out. First Solar down nearly 8% to $164.92, a loss of $600,000 in value, taking their calls to 18+% out of the money. Hims and Hers down 3.57% to $62.34, a loss of $462,000 in value, almost 5% out of the money. Robinhood, another one that does not have calls sold. They've sold put spreads, and again, this worked out well. They started the week in the money on these puts and went up on the very first day 4%, taking them out of the money by 3.5%. So that's working well. $544,000 in value added. IONQ up a little over 0.25% to $35.09, gain of $32,000 in value, and their calls are still out of the money, but only by 1.1%. Mara Holdings up 0.68% to $16.32, still 7+% out of the money, a gain of $68,000. So these moves like this work real well for us. It goes up, we go up in value, but we don't blow through the calls, so we get to keep all that premium. So that number will shrink tomorrow. MicroStrategy up 3.41% to $413, taking their calls into the money by 2%. It went up by $500,000+ in value, but these are going to end up costing money to close out. And then it helped, though. Basically, another one, they had a put spread, and their puts were starting the week in the money. They moved by 3.4%, taking them out of the money. So looking to keep all that premium. NVIDIA up a fraction to $135.57, gain of $17,000 in value. Calls are still 6% out of the money. Color coding, I didn't go over it. I just always assume people have watched before. But if you're new here, red would be in the money. That's where we don't want to be because we're going to have to pay to close them out. Yellow would be less than 5% out of the money, so it's in our favor, but it's close to going against us. And then green would be greater than 5% out of the money. Not that anything's safe because we've seen all these stocks move 10-20% in a day anytime. Okay, Oklo up 5.3% to $39.57. Luckily, these were way out of the money because they're still almost 7% out of the money, and we gained $600,000 in value. Palantir lost about 2.5% to $126.33. It helped with the two different call strike prices at $133 and $135. They're now 5 and 6+% out of the money, but the put spread with the closer put being 129 is now 2.1% in the money. So we would like that to trade a little higher, over 129 but below 133. So if you watch the video, you remember they were shooting for a pretty tight window there, but it lost 420,000 in value today. Reddit lost 4.63% to 107.99, loss of a little over 500,000 in value, and their calls are now 12+% out of the money. Rigetti up 1.69%, and even 70,000. 12.05 is the closing price, 7.8% out of the money for the calls. RH lost 2.91% to 203.91. Calls are now 12+% out of the money, and value went down by 125,000. SMCI down nearly 3% to 44.79, taking the calls 11+% out of the money. Change in value of 183,000 to the negative. Snowflake went down 0.56%, which helped because they were about 0.75%. They were about 0.25% in the money. They moved to about 0.25% out of the money to 182.05, loss of 46,000 in value. But we're hoping they stay right there all week, and we get to keep all that premium and not have to pay that kind of money to close it out. TNA, triple leveraged fund, down 1.37% to 31.01. This is one of the ones where they didn't sell a call. They only sold a put spread. Luckily, it was about 1.4% out of the money, but now it's 0.03% out of the money. So can't afford for this one to go down anymore this week, or it's going to cost money to close it out. TQQQ, similar, had a put spread only, went up 0.27%, but they had already started with these in the money, and now they're just a little bit deeper in the money. But all it's going to take, they were 0.75% in the money. Now they're only 0.5%, right? Because as that moves further up, these will move further out of the money. So $46,000 value added. Tesla down 2.25% to 342.09. Calls are still 5% plus out of the money, and the loss of 360,000 in value. Upstart lost 1.27 to 47.77. Unfortunately, this was one of the ones where they only sold puts, and so that put is now in the money by 1%. So we just need that to go up a little bit this week. Vertiv, another one. The last two, Vertiv and Vistracorp, all only have put options. These two went up, so that helped. Up 0.3% to 106.40. Taking those puts 1.3% out of the money and adding 25,000 to the value. Vistracorp up almost 0.5% to 157.32. Almost getting these puts out of the money. We just need one more up day to get them out. Gain of 49,000. So overall, with all the wins and losses combined, the value of the fund went down by about $1.5 million. All right. Again, this NAV won't get updated until tomorrow when I get all the correct pricing of holdings. So now we'll move on to the trades that they made today. I've hidden all previous trades that we've already talked about. That's why it jumps from row 8 to 273 to 494. So these are just today's trades. All right. And so they took advantage of funds that dropped big. They, like this one, for example, they closed ASTS's 295 and brought it down to 270, and the puts to go along with them. Overall winning with 99,000, bringing those in closer, trying to make more money on them. Carvana, what did we do? Closed out the 302.50s and opened 315s. Everything stayed within the same week on all these trades before I go into it. So Carvana went up. They basically went ahead and took the loss and moved them up to 315. Overall, only losing 5,000, still giving themselves a chance for a win at the end of the week. First Solar, all they did was for solar went down, so they closed out the 192 or the 195s for 68 cents and sold calls closer to the money at 182.50. Overall profit in 73,000. Robinhood closed the 620s. Another thing, I'm not going to go back and forth, but almost all of these, they only did about half the shares. So they didn't close out all the options. They in general closed about half, sometimes less. But so they closed their 620s and opened 660s, and the puts to go along with them. Overall, losing 52,000. MicroStrategy, I'm not sure how they pulled this one off. Closed out their 400s, opened 420s, and the puts to go with them for an exact even exchange. So not bad. Reddit, they just adjusted the put size, so they sold the 100 put and bought 95 put. Overall, $65,000 win. TNA closed out the 310s, roughly half of them, and moved them up to 315s. Strike prices on the calls, that is. Overall, losing 66,000. TQQQ, similar, about half. Closed the 720s, moved them up to 730s, just trying to buy themselves a little bit of wiggle room, whatever you want to call it. Loss of 95,000. Upstart closed their 480s, moved them up to 490s. $38,000 loss. So it's going to end up being a losing day, but they're trying to set themselves up to not have their calls get blown throughout the week. They're trying to still scrounge a win rather than leave things real close and just having to hope nothing happens. Vertiv closed their 105s, moved them to 109, a little bit further out of the money, 12,000 loss. And Vistra Corp closed their 157.50s, moved them up to 160s for a $26,000 loss. So overall, lost 58,000 in trades today. So it was a losing day in trades, but we're trying to set up an overall win. That's supposed to be the date. I don't know why it formatted it that way. That's better. And we saw the values drop. But they were aggressively trying to move. So I think we're going to set ourselves up for wins later on in the week. This being the first day going towards next week's payout. Last week's money. Last week's trades, Monday to Friday, go towards this week. So on Wednesday, we will see what we're going to get. All right. I think that's all I have for you. If you watch the other videos I make on some of the individual funds, I think I'm going to start doing a weekly look ahead, doing like a Wednesday distribution day video, and then doing a Friday close, payday close out. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of demand for the in-betweens, and they really don't make a lot of trades. Only 2 of the funds out of the 7 that I cover even make a trade. So I would literally just be reading you the same info day after day. So, all right, I got the dad joke of the day. So I just want to, as always, thank everybody. Appreciate you watching. Appreciate all the comments. Everybody's very encouraging, especially for me being new. So thanks for all the help. We're up to 322 subscribers. The goal's 1,000, so we're getting there. Please like, share, subscribe if you don't already. Check me out on X too. I'll always announce when the next video is being put out. So, all right, dad joke of the day. Did you hear about the sensitive burglar? He takes things personally. All right, thank you. Hope you guys had a great trading day, and good luck tomorrow.